Hello and welcome back. Northstar here with another Cell Singularity Let's Play. Now, hope you folks are all well. Enjoying the spring weather, which I suppose if there's a delay on when this gets updated, may be more advanced than when I record this. I don't remember if there's a buffer in this series, like there are on some of the others. Some of them are as much as a month, which can lead to weird things where, um, conversation, things that conversations that would kind of make sense in the, well, not conversations, but comments that would make sense in the context of other Let's Play series. You get the timing gets messed up because they have different buffer lengths. If you watch multiple of my series, it'll either get the impression that certain series events are lasting much longer than they are because two things are recorded one day after another, but uploaded such that they publish a month apart, or things happen shorter than they actually did. Don't try to figure out the timing, I guess, always, because of the buffer. But it's spring. It's warming up. People are out walking the dogs and not in a hurry because it's cold, and I can pet a few dogs, which is nice. I wish I had one, but, um, excuse me. I suffer from long COVID, and I have to stay with family. It's new music because I'm disabled and not healthy enough to work thanks to long COVID. I'm staying with family, and the family member I stay with doesn't. It's all, ooh, dogs are messy. It sucks because they're sweet, awesome creatures. Provide affection. Sagittarius dwarf galaxy here is not too expensive to upgrade. That's where the music came and went. Swallowed whole. In a few billion years, the Milky Way absorb the large Magellanic Cloud, adding mass and matter to its halo. It's an easy victory for a giant galaxy over a tiny one, but short-lived. Andromeda Galaxy will be buried down the Milky Way, poised for a head-on collision. Fun. It's going to really rearrange what the sky looks like here on Earth. So it's spring. It's nice. Of course, I was lost in thought today about this time of year. Things would normally be approaching finals if I was in school. It really does suck that our society doesn't have more ways to include people who are disabled. For instance, I was trying to become a physician before I was disabled. In an ideal society, when we had a lot more physicians and physician educators, there would still be mechanisms for me to maybe, I don't know. And this isn't even available to people who are healthy, but in an ideal society, people would be able to say audit med school classes, learn what I can, that there's ever a cure for long COVID, to be better positioned to actually attend medical school, which I was in a special master's. I had the grades. I was going to make it. I was to medical school, a perfect 4.0 program where that was pretty much a guarantee of getting into med school somewhere. Uh, Maybe not always the best med schools, but almost certainly we got in somewhere. Program head was recommending Australian med school, somewhere that's a whole tier above like the Caribbean med schools, as a backup to the U.S. ones, which is not to say they could get in, but that I was head and shoulders enough above people who would normally use Caribbean med schools as backups. The Australian med school, one in like the Northwest Territory that has real trouble filling its classes, and one in Ireland, another international. Those would be good ones to consider as backups, in addition to U.S. And I'd be sure to get in somewhere with the grades I had. But not most people don't get 4.0s in programs that are taught by MD professors, because these professors were the same people who taught the MD students at the med school where I was taking the special masters. And didn't have some professors say they were, that I think one of them even said I was the smartest student he'd ever had. And mind you, he had taught medical students, like actual physicians, so I may have impressed that guy more than most. Spent a lot of time around that professor, but clearly I was very intelligent. In an ideal world, I'd be able to audit classes a little. I only have energy to audit one a day, and not every day, because some days I'd just be too sick. But it would still be a useful way to continue to develop my knowledge, and maybe if there's ever a cure for long COVID, be able to hit the ground running. But that kind of thing doesn't exist. They don't even allow healthy people to audit med school seats. They can't have them, say, asking professors questions after, because they don't have enough medical educators in the United States to even have the enrolled students who actually become physicians asking questions, which is a shame. Our society doesn't prioritize knowledge, and it doesn't prioritize healthcare, and we don't train enough physicians. We don't have enough physician educators, which is actually what I'd hoped to do with my career, was to become a physician for a while and then go in later in life. Because I would have been a doctor way older than most, and so to have a reasonable length of career, would need to have something I could do when I was getting too old I'd hoped to be a surgeon, but when I was getting too old to cut, the hope would have been to become a medical educator at a med school, starting in my 60s or late 50s, and just teach for 30 more years or something, 20 more years, whatever, 10 more years. And that's what I'd hoped to do. So it's an issue near and dear to my heart, is the point. Is that we don't have enough medical educators in the United States. We don't even have dedicated programs to train people who wish to teach medical students as opposed to just being physicians. And sometimes even PhDs in some countries will help teach them certain subjects, so it's not just MDs who teach MDs. But we don't have programs for that. I felt very strong about the physician shortage in the US, and we can't train more physicians without more physician educators and more programs. I'd also hope to try and organize, very ambitiously, maybe a new med school, or less ambitiously, new residency programs. That was my kind of dream, and to even go to, if humans went to Mars and did a Mars colony, maybe even to try and do such a program there instead of on Earth, if not in the US. None of that will ever be possible now because of long COVID, and even if there's ever a cure, I'll last so many years. But in a better society, it would at least be possible to audit med school classes. There'd be accommodations for that and supportive things for people with disabilities to still at least set themselves up to maybe a better chance of pursuing their dreams if there's ever a cure for their conditions. And we'd be assiduously researching cures for curable conditions, which long COVID should theoretically be curable. Of course, a lot of things we don't think about as curable should be, most people, I think, can understand long COVID probably someday there'll be a cure for, but give you a different example. If someone loses a leg, we don't think of that as curable, but someday we'll be able to grow new legs in a vat. That's just a matter of technological development. There's no law of physics that says you can't do that eventually. Someday we'll be able to restore sight to the blind. We already have ways to kind of make those who can't hear sometimes hear with cochlear implants and stuff. I think people who get those, they usually have a little hearing, but they're effectively deaf, and we give them back the ability to hear. Very expensive, though. Not available to most people who need them, unfortunately. Which is what capitalism does to healthcare. People are literally deaf who could hear if they could afford cochlear implants, just because the United States wants to make a few billionaires very rich, so we don't make this life-changing treatment available to a lot of people. That's just wrong. Capitalism has no place in healthcare. But anyways, but you know, it's less ambitious that maybe we'll figure out what's going on with COVID. Especially, it seems to right now. The theory is it seems to show signs of an autoimmune disease. And there are some very innovative techniques coming out for curing or treating autoimmune diseases such that they're very manageable. So with research, we could probably have people with long COVID back to normal lives. But it's going to require billions and billions and billions of research, and we'd rather give that money as tax credits. I mean, not tax credits, tax cuts. Yeah. Sometimes I misspeak. This thing long COVID causes me to do sometimes say the wrong word. We'd rather give tax cuts to billionaires instead of developing a cure for long COVID. Even though a cure for long COVID would actually increase the size of the workforce by putting people back into it, and thus grow the economy, and thus actually generate more wealth in the long run than any amount of billionaire tax cuts ever could. And probably, given how our society is organized, most of that wealth ends up in the hands of billionaires. So it's actually short-sighted, and it's making the billionaires less rich than they could otherwise be. But yeah, never ever accuse capitalism of being farsighted. It's not. It's short-sighted to the absolute utmost. It only thinks of short-term profit. And yes, a little money you have now can be invested for like 7 to 10% returns. I mean, the billionaires often get better than the rest of us, which, you know, interest makes interest makes interest. It's true. But at the same time, the returns traditional investments can make are falling off and getting less and less as we reach the kind of technological limits of our society. And the ways we can really push those further is with more scientific research and development, which is what curing a disease like COVID is an example of, is scientific research growing the economy by increasing the workforce in this case. Of course, they probably think they're going to automate all the jobs and they won't need workers someday, the people in power, so they don't care to cure disabilities. Which is stupid and over-optimistic. AI will definitely put a lot of people out of work, but we'll still need workers, and there'll still be room for growing the workforce, if for no other reason to depress wages further and make it so they can pay people less to do. There's always going to be certain jobs. They're more skilled, and always a certain percentage of people are willing to study long hard enough to do, like engineering. And then there's always going to be other jobs where it's a combination of only some portion of the population can do it, and then we set up artificial barriers to make it even harder, like medicine, where kids from wealthier backgrounds are much more likely to succeed in trying to become doctors than those from poorer backgrounds. For instance, I did a special master's. That's very, 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 very expensive. I did it by borrowing enormous amounts of student loan debt. I did not come from a rich background, but it's not a coincidence that most people who do special masters are from very rich families, because they don't have to, you know, take on 6-digit figures in debt to do a special master's like I did. That's how it's insanely expensive to do one. And, you know, if you're borrowing like $120,000 to get another shot at med school, by another shot I mean if you're not getting there just from your undergrad education, usually. I was the rare person who already had a graduate degree before this, but most people who do special masters don't have any grad degrees, just undergrad. It's partly because I already had a grad degree. I knew it would be worthwhile, because that grad degree, my greater amount, while the degree itself does not begin in mid school, the greater amount of scientific research I had done during that time, the connections I made, recommendations. I mean, I was already closer to most people with just an undergrad degree. And so I didn't have to do as well as special masters to be sure I'd make it to med school. And then I, of course, I had more room for error than most, but then I ended up getting straight A's, and so I could have done it just at undergrad, and even worse undergrad grades. Mine weren't bad. I went to school that did not do grade inflation. It was very, very harsh in grading, much so the same work could get you much lower grades than most. And I had a B plus average there, which at a lot of other schools would have been already an A average. Like not a 4.0, but like maybe like a 3.9 at a lot of other schools, the same amount of work. So I already got screwed by my school not doing grade inflation. Very, very difficult school. And where average GPAs are much lower than other places. It's not because the kids weren't smarter. I'll tell you, the kids that were incredibly smart. It's because, and actually, I've looked at the average GPAs in my university have gone up over time because they've slowly caved to grade inflation, but it was a lot lower back when I went there. So if I name the school, which should be giving out too much information about myself in there, and I won't do anyhow, people will look at the average GPAs and I'd be like, that's not so much lower, and that's because it's come up because they recognized belatedly that being so harsh with the grading was just screwing the graduates over. And they've conformed to the standards in most other universities, how much work it takes to get a B, an A, a C. I even went to a school for a while that didn't do A pluses without special recommendation. That's probably giving too much info, but I did not stay there, did not graduate from there, so it's not going to give as much info out about me because I. Oh, what did I just open? Oops. Hit a miss key. And actually earned an A plus in class where they didn't give A pluses without special teacher recommendation, as I would have normally been A plus anywhere else. And the TA told me I should ask the professor for an A plus. He would definitely give it to me, and I didn't. I didn't have the guts. This was a freshman, and I transferred to where the place that had really low, didn't do grade inflation. But both my universities undergrad didn't do grade inflation. One didn't even allow you to get A pluses, is what I'm saying, without literally getting a special form from the professor, who very few students ever got. I was lucky enough to be smarter than most people, even at schools like this, but that's luck. You know, a lot of people just got screwed by not being quite as smart and being at these schools. But yeah, special masters are an example of one way that rich kids get a huge leg up in getting to med school, because they can buff their credentials by doing an incredibly expensive program that most people from poor backgrounds can't afford without huge amounts of debt, which is very risky because if you don't make it, you've screwed over your whole life. Or if, like me, became disabled now, if they ever cure long COVID, I'll still have the debt. And who knows if the school will still let me go back and finish my degrees at that point, or if they say, oh, it's been too many years. You know, if they cure long COVID 12 years now, they might say, no, we're not going to let you go back, even though you were a straight A student. And even if I do, probably won't get me to med school at that point, because I'll be, God knows how old. The med school's like, nope, you're too old. Sure, you have straight A's and a special master's, and we would have let you when you're younger, but you're too old now. It's technically legal. That's age discrimination, but they'll find some excuse. And then on the sly, tell me the real reason or something, because sometimes they'll do that. They'll feel bad and they'll tell you the real reason off the record for something. Did apply to one med school for my special master's grades in, and they told me off the record the real reason they weren't accepting me was because my undergrad grades and overall average grades weren't high enough. It's like, you know, my undergrad school didn't practice grade inflation. They definitely would have accepted me with higher GPA, but they said that off the record, so I couldn't like. And of course, with the grades I got in the special masters, I could have gotten in there if I'd been able to finish reapplying. Had already started reapplying there to that med school, and I got long COVID, and so I didn't ever finish the process because I was sick and not able to finish my program. There's no point. But Yeah. An ideal society, though, we'd let people like me, audit med school classes and provide not. I'm getting screwed over by a government bureaucrat who is hostile and rude and cited outdated Social Security disability insurance law rules that haven't existed for like at least 5 years. That were replaced like now with the SSDI. You can work credits any time during a year. So if they're looking at like the year 2016, say, and you worked a summer job that earned $5,000, and then you worked part time the rest of the year. It used to be if you earned during the part time the rest of the year less than like I don't know 1,500 a quarter, you'd only earn work credit for a quarter of a year from just the summer portion. But they changed that. So now if you earn enough money in that year, which say 5,000 summer job plus some part time, that would be enough to earn full credit. For I think I'm not sure that the work credit amount for that year might have been more than 1250, but maybe enough to earn 3 credits for sure. I would have to check the numbers. Maybe you earned 8,000 summer job. You get the idea though. If you earned a lot in a summer job, unless the rest of the year, you can now earn full work credits. And this person was using the old system where you could only earn 1 work credit per quarter, which is inaccurate, and being rude to me and hostile, and literally laughing at me when I said, like, there has to be a means to appeal unjust rules that screw people over, to make sure people don't just get messed up by unfair rules. Like, I was literally talking about the rule. She was saying it's not the rule anymore about quarters, because that's patently unjust. I recognize it's unjust. And it turns out it's not the law anymore. That she was literally saying a rule that was replaced because it was unjust and unfair. And I was saying there has to be a means to appeal a rule like that, because that's nonsense. That I can only earn 1 work credit per quarter. And she laughed at me. And she was laughing at me about saying something I was completely right about, in a way. And that law had been replaced because it was considered unjust. And it had been replaced like at least 5 years prior, so her information was really outdated, or she was intentionally lying to me and saying an outdated rule, so that if someone came to her and said, you say an outdated rule, she would say, oh, I was misinformed. She may have known she was lying. I think this person did. It was intentionally citing a rule that was no longer a rule, just to fuck me over. Because this person was just hostile and rude. But instead of like an ideal world where I'd probably be auditing med schools, instead I'm struggling with abusive bureaucrats like that person who may have been related based on the last name to a childhood bully I had, because I'm back in my hometown thanks to long COVID. And I'm going to file a complaint about that bureaucrat, actually. Tried to get through before, but when I did a callback for the federal number, Social Security Administration, for a little while you couldn't reach them at all. They changed their means to reach them, and now it's telling you can do a callback. If like there's a really long wait time, you can set a callback and they'll call you back. An hour, 2 hours, whatever, from when you call, when they finally have time to speak to you. But I missed the callback. And they called back apparently 3 more minutes after that, or 5 minutes after the first callback, but I hadn't realized they would do more than 1 attempt, so like turn my phone off. I was frustrated after missing it. And I won't make that mistake again. No, even if I miss the first callback, they'll try again in a few minutes. But anyways, I'm going to file a complaint about that employee and try and speak to someone at the federal office who almost certainly knows the rules better and won't be rude, because it's not like the whole administration is full of people like that. They just got a bad apple, I think. I know exactly what this person said. I'm not going to say whether or not I had a recording of the conversation, but I had very, 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 very careful notes of what this person said. Let me put it that way. And I know for certain this person was being abusive and rude and lying. And they record the conversations. They tell you when you call this conversation is being recorded. So I'm going to ask them to go back to recording. that they have, and that can prove beyond a doubt this employee was misbehaving. Maybe this person wanted to get fired. Maybe they're so sick of their job they had to know they're being recorded. Maybe no one ever goes back over the recordings unless directed, and they figured they could get away with it. I don't know. All I know is I have to get around this person. And when I called the local office again later, the same person picked up and they wouldn't let me speak to their supervisor. Like, they literally just, I said, can I speak to the supervisor? Like, no, I'll tell the supervisor you called. I never got a call back. Supervisor, they probably didn't speak to the supervisor. I can't prove that, but it's almost certainly the case. They're just lying, because what am I going to do? That's what they figured. This person's got a reckoning coming. I'm sure someone at the federal office will come reprimand them for their bad behavior. But, I shouldn't be having to deal with this shit. In a good, healthy society, there'd be work on a cure, and there'd be work to make sure that people like me don't lose hope and can still, have a plausible shot at our dreams. Stuff like being able to, if you want to become a doctor, audit med school seats. If you wanted to become, say you were on the path to becoming an engineer and you got disabled in college, you'd probably be able to audit engineering school seats. You get the idea. Or maybe programs to shadow people in jobs so you could still see something. Because shadowing is not always hard. It can be hard. I remember when I shadowed a physician once, it was brutal, but because I had to be on my feet the whole time. But they could probably work out shorter, easier shadowing periods for people who were disabled with long COVID. Those who are well enough to wheel around in a wheelchair, because many people with long COVID are in wheelchairs, or walk around for a couple hours a day. I could spend maybe 2 to 3 hours on my feet in a day, with rests every 15 minutes, or 30 minutes maybe. Nah, 30 would be too much. Every 15 to 20 minutes, if I sit down for 2, I could spend maybe up to 3 hours on my feet, which is not quite enough to work, because the shortest period you can really work and any employer will take is if you need to be able to be on your feet for at least 4 to 5 hours a day without more than one rest. And I can't do that with long COVID. It's impossible. So unless they literally stuck me in a wheelchair as a workaround for that, which is humiliating, embarrassing when I can walk, I just can't be on my feet that many hours anymore. Because I'll get shaky and I'll literally collapse if I'm on my feet for 3 hours without being able to sit down. Oh, in fact, did not mean to. In fact, I'll get shaky after just 30 minutes without being able to sit down. It sucks, but ideal society would be working with people. Probably would have special communities. People on COVID could stay in, where they could receive concentrate support services, have counselors who specialize in dealing with people with long COVID. And they'd have they could have a little, I don't know, almost a dormitory housing situation. It wouldn't be required, but that where people would have the option of staying in community like that, and have a higher density of support services where it'd be more cost effective rather than what we have, which is a checkerboard where many parts of the countries you can't find anything, or you can only find stuff online. No, I'm not going to go to an online support group where it's a bunch of people talking over Zoom about what it's like to have long COVID. It's just, I need to be there in person if I'm going to get anything out of it. That's just how I am. I never found Zoom, during the pandemic, I never found that to be at all being in the same room as someone. I know for some people they would prefer Zoom, but that's not me. Rather be sitting in a chair in a circle talking to other people than sitting on Zoom talking to people. It's not just a matter of preference. I wouldn't get anything out of the Zoom, and I would get something out of a circle group therapy kind of thing for long COVID. I'm talking about support. I don't have any mental health things that would require therapy, but it still is nice to have like a support group when you're dealing with. They have the same thing for like people who are diagnosed with cancer, for instance, will often do support groups like this, or people who ended up in a wheelchair. Like there's all sorts of support groups, but things, especially the pandemic, they're now so spread out, and a lot of them are Zoom only. And the long COVID ones seem to be mostly Zoom only, which just doesn't work for me. But in an ideal society, there would be, like I said, there'd be also, because one of the problems made people long COVID have a difficult, tenuous housing situation. So if there was like a specialized community with like federally provided housing people on COVID, since people, those who are disabled, because if you're disabled, you're going to have to be, the government's going to have to, one way or another, support you, or you're going to end up homeless and dying because you got disabled by virus. And that's only if you get screwed out of like SSDI, SSI. If the government is not screwing out of programs that you're supposed to be entitled to, then they are going to have to support you one way or another. So, like an actual public housing support community specialized on COVID would make sense and save money if they were actually interested in helping people. But they're not. By they, I mean the people with power, the ruling class, which isn't really the bureaucrats. They don't make this. Important thing to recognize about the U.S. government is that the bureaucrats don't make the rules exactly. Well, I mean, they do, but they don't. So laws set out what goals the rules have to accomplish, and sometimes the law even spells out some of how regulations need to be done on things to a sometimes surprising detail, but usually they're vague. Unless the law specifically spells out how rules have to be written, bureaucrats come up with rules to interpret how to meet the goals that are spelled out in the law. And so they have quite a bit of leeway, but neither the laws nor the rules, neither the people make the laws nor the rules seem interested in helping, is what I'm trying to get at. And especially not the ruling class people make the laws, the senators kind of type. I mean, there's good apples. There's a few people mixed in who really do care, but there's a lot who don't. A lot pretend to, but don't. And the billionaires who very much, they don't actually sit down and make the laws, but everyone knows they buy politicians, so they're really the real ruling class. Billionaires certainly don't give a fuck. Most of them, anyhow. There's the occasional good apple or class trader who would betray the interests of the billionaires to try and do what's best for the country as a whole. These people exist. FDR was a class trader, for instance, the good type of class trader, the type who betrayed the interests of the ultra wealthy to help ordinary Americans with the Great Depression. Class traders aren't always a bad thing. It's just like being a trader isn't always a bad thing. If you were a trader to the Nazis and you betrayed them to, help people escape the Holocaust, you were the good type of trader. Traders aren't always bad if you're betraying evil. FDR being a class trader to the billionaire class was a good thing. He's the good type of class trader. Anyways, enough of that. I hope you folks enjoyed the video. The random discussions were enlightening or interesting, or at least not boring or aggravating. Take care of each other, viewers. Be kind to yourselves. May you always find a guiding star to lead you home. Adieu.